Greetings, everyone. This is Virtuous Roots, where we reclaim virtue to bring it to our home and yours. And I'm Thomas McCuddy.
I'm Thomas Quackenbush.
I'm Nick Wiegand, and the conversation for today is the idea of dinner table discipleship. And what we mean by that is the concept of seizing opportunities to disciple our families. And obviously the best discipler there ever was is Christ. And so we can look at his example, and there are many to choose from, but he never did he let an opportunity pass by which he could disciple. And so I'm going to read Mark 9:33 through 37. And they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12, and he said to them, "If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all." And he took a child and put him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me." The reason I like that verse to begin this discussion is kind of like twofold. A, Christ did not allow the opportunity to pass where he could rebuke, correct his disciples, but then he also used the object lesson of the child to teach them so that they fully grasp exactly what he was saying.
Mm.
And so in these busy lives, and we're talking about dinner table discipleship, in these busy lives that we all lead, how can we do the same thing? How can we seize these opportunities?
I think some of the motivation out of this comes from we think discipleship is the way like school works. Like we have to send them to a class, send them to a small group, has to be formalized. And we've lost the notion that even like as we educate, as we disciple, these things go hand in hand, that they can learn as we go through life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this image of dinner table discipleship, like that is a time for genuine discipleship. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to sprinkle this a little bit, or just try to, I think we view almost the family as auxiliary, but the family is absolutely critical. And taking these moments, just like what Jesus did, that is the genuine discipleship. It's being aware and being intentional that when you have these moments, when you have the chance to, in real time, like in the case with his disciples who were having an argument. So instead of Jesus hushing them up so that he can get on with the big business that he was about, because they were on mission,
Right.
he uses that to teach them. And so we read these things in Scripture, we look at them and we view them as like these profound teaching moments, and we're constantly, because they are. But for Jesus and the disciples, that was just as they were going. This
Every
was
day.
just
Yeah.
a part of it, and that's what shaped them.
Mhm.
And I think it's almost like, I'll use an example you'll approve of and the one you won't approve of. So when we think of, that sets you up. We think of like the master-apprentice relationship, that the master and artisan has a purpose of training, and they're with them and they're learning and they're just doing, like, he's not doing classes in school. It's not really formal. It's like, let's
Sure.
make something. Let's
Yeah,
do
let's-
this.
yeah,
Let's come join me. And sometimes the lessons may not even had to do with actually the thing they were making. Like maybe it's because of patience or something else. And so in our homes, I want to call parents to be cognizant of that. That in those moments when you're driving, when you're going to the store, like that, I will many times. I did this as a youth pastor. I would end up going to like Walmart, and I'm like get some kids together, and they would just join me in a Walmart run, and to spend time together to have these conversations.
Right.
And again, as a
Well,
youth pastor, this was
bef-
regular.
Before you move on, though,
Mhm.
this you're right. I approve of this example. Is the master apprentice? It always is going to take longer to do the task
Mhm.
every time.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're the one doing it and they're just standing idly by asking questions, it is always going to take longer to do the task. And if you allow them to put their grubby little hands on the project, you also might take way longer because you're going to have to redo something. It is always going to be inconvenient with the task at hand to take those moments to teach them.
Mm.
It's going to take longer to take the little ones to the grocery store, to walk with them and talk with them. It is always going to take longer to give these lessons. I mean, Christ literally stopped what he was doing, called the 12 disciples over so that he could give this profound lesson to everyone instead of doing what he was on his, like you just said, on the mission to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now your example I'm not going to prove of. Go with your Star Wars example.
Oh, you were very good.
I
Very
figured
good.
we were
You
going
figured
there.
it out.
Yeah.
Yes, because between the master and the Padawan.
Nah,
So, don't look so disapproving at me. So,
for the record, you disapprove as well.
I just
Okay, go ahead.
okay. So, what is interesting? What I've noticed is you watch like some of the Star Wars, particularly like the Clone Wars, like some of the TV shows that are longer running. That's how they trained. They always had them with them. It was never formalized, really. It was always in those moments, always showing this is why we do this. This is what to look at. What did you learn here? They were always debriefing, and that was the training. And they just, in some ways, it seemed like they just kind of hung out with the master for several years, and then suddenly they were the master because they had absorbed it. They had organically become this. And so there is a lesson there that I think that this is why discipleship, I mean, there's even books written on organic, they call it organic discipleship, something that's much more natural as it grows. And I think that's where we think about our lives. And even when I'm with my 15-year-old, when we're out and we're driving and talk about, we see the other things people are doing and why it's good or why it's bad or why I make these decisions, those things actually remain more than if they were taking a class or, going through a book or something. So I think that's why parents minimize the power of those moments. And particularly, we had a speech and debate tournament, and I had left early, and my son called me and was just letting me know how things went. And he was wanting to know like some of the rounds I had judged, and I was meeting some of the people. And so he's like, what do you think about this one person? I was like, well, here's her natural ability. Here's what I saw in her. And I was like, and I believe you can get there too. Like, you're on the path. Here's the kinds of steps. Here's the kinds of things. And so I just basically debriefed with him for like 30 minutes. But he went on and on about how much that meant to him and how excited he was and just how appreciative he was.
Yep.
So I think also this is a call to parents that when it's not just, okay, I'm doing my duty in discipling my child, you're spending time with them.
Yeah.
And they remember that.
Well, I think we might be taking something for granted, the three of us sitting here, on understanding that it is our job and our role to disciple our children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I believe there are many parents out there who believe it is 100% the church's responsibility to disciple their children. They outsource it.
Right.
Just like it is commonplace to outsource education of your children, outsource discipleship of your children, outsource basically all aspects of raising the child and turning them into the proper human being that they're going to become. Vodi Bakum, during one of his sermons, he said, if you let the Romans, I'm gonna butcher it, but the concept is sound. If you let the Romans educate your children, don't be surprised when they become Romans.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens, I mean, across the board with education, with discipleship, with everything. And so I just need to make sure that I know we're taking it for granted, the understanding that it's our role to disciple our children. It is the parent's role. It's important that everyone who's listening understands that it's not the church's job to disciple their kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the church's job to, like, it's not done in Sunday school. It's not done on Wednesday night children's or Sunday morning children's church or Wednesday, whatever youth group. That's not the discipleship. That should just be like a sprinkling on top.
That's the means to an end. Like, the end goal is the discipleship. And part of the reason why we send to the youth group when we do these, it's part of that.
Sure.
Because they're going to be hearing from people who have different training that we do.
Right.
They're going to have a different skill set. They're going to be around people who, I mean, that's even why I like my kids hanging around you, is because you have the carpet, not that, there's other reasons, but one is your ability to build things and you have skills. skill set I cannot offer. And I want my boys to have that, but you also offer with that not just the skills, but also the character. And that's, again, it enriches my
I'm
home
glad you clarified. Not
to have
Nick
the-
builds things.
Yeah.
And they-
Nick does build things, but Nick builds things and has character.
I think that's the nicest thing he's ever said to you.
he might be.
I've said way nicer
Especially
things.
recorded.
I'm just- anyway, so point being, find, in your church, you have resources. You have things to augment. You
To
have
augment. That's the
supplement.
key. It's supplement
Yeah.
augmentation.
And I think that's why, for parents not to downplay, it's like, well, the youth group has a budget, and the youth group has, and the church has all these things we don't. But what the church does not have that the kids need is the mom and the dad.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the family. That's what God instituted.
Yeah, I mean, like, use the pastors, use the youth leaders, use us to, when that kid asks you that incredibly difficult question that you are ill prepared to answer,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, what are the different end times beliefs, right? Like, what's dispensationalism? What, like, what's amillennialism? Like,
Mhm.
when let the kid come to the pastor for that. But when it comes to building character
Yeah.
and it comes to knowing who Christ is, like, if you can't answer the question, absolutely use the church to as that backstop to help you. But the basics, the gospel, the character, the virtue,
Yeah,
that should be
the parents' domain.
the parents' domain in the home.
So as a quick, I don't know, tip for in parenting, if a child asks a question you don't know, what I encourage, don't just send them off to the pastor, go with them.
Yeah.
Like, learn together.
Way better.
And-
Yeah.
But again, and it's something that sometimes we just don't think about, and that's
Right.
why we're talking about this, because that is going, and it's going to require a little bit of your time
Mhm.
to go, but you're going together, and you're going to learn together. Because if you're admitting, I don't know the answer to that, let's go find out together.
Well, I've had parents come to me and be like, "You'll never guess what my kid asked me," and they'll ask me the question, and I'll be like, "Wow, that's incredible from that young mind," and they'll want to know so that they can go and explain it to their child. That's
Mhm.
also perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so. This kind of story about what's something that happened last week. Because I'm as a pastor elder at my church, we have a school that's connected, so we're part of the we make up the church, the school board, and we had this one young man who was having a really hard time keeping his hands to himself and not like violently attacking the other children. And mom had a history of she's actually in prison for assault and all these. He had very bad examples. The dad was absentee, and now he's trying to get involved. And when he was initially having these issues, and we're bringing it up to him, the principal, like, he wanted to like have us counsel him and help him through this or whatever. And before we even had a chance to do that, the kid went and like body slammed another student in recess, and we had to expel him. And then the for whatever reason, the dad decides to appeal it. And I'm like, we can wiggle around with certain things, but when it comes to this type of violence, and one of my back of my mind is like, he just, instead of him actually trying to figure out how can I as a dad raise my child so he knows how to treat other people, rather than just sending him to us and be like, you guys didn't counsel him, or you didn't have the whatever, you failed my son. Like, how do we fail your son? He body slammed another child. And like, so like, it's just yeah, like you're saying, it's like outsourcing this, and then you see how by outsourcing the parenting, this kid is actually hurting other students.
Right.
And then dad wants to call his son the victim, even though he's the one victimizing the other students, because he doesn't. It all shines back on him and his lack of responsibility.
It becomes like we need to walk with the parents.
Yeah, and
we need to be there for them, like with the church, the school, like. But again, that becomes part of the parenting mindset. They don't see it that way. They don't think they're helping me. It's like I'm sending my kid off.
Yeah, but if
And-
we're going to walk with the parent, then they need to be the type of parent who can accept the feedback,
Right.
who can be teachable, who can, want to grow and grow with that child, I would love to walk with the parent.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing to tell someone is that they don't parent well.
Mhm.
Right? Have
Well-
you ever met someone
well-
who's like, you're a terrible parent, and they're like, I didn't think about that. You're right, I am. How should I change? Like, I've never seen that before.
Well, and a lot of times, like, because my wife's a teacher as well, and she deals with parents. She has great parents, and she has other parents, and especially if she has a difficult child. My wife is really good with children, especially behavioral issues, because it's her background, and she knows how to de-escalate. But she also brings the parents in and explains to them what's going on, because she can do whatever she wants in school, and she can order her classroom any way she wants. As soon as they leave, it's not being reinforced.
For sure.
And if the kid goes home and complains that, Mrs. Quackabush she got upset with me and I got a detention or redden up or whatever they had to do, instead of them being like, "Well, did you do it?" It's like, it's good. You need that, trying to teach them that this discipline is going to help them, rather than going to the school and yelling at my wife
Right.
because their kid, because it all reflects back on them.
Sure.
And I think the reason why, I think parents feel guilty deep down that they're not doing the things like we're talking about, like having meaningful conversations at the dinner table, spending that time and getting to know your kid that seems alien to you, all of those things. And then, like, they send their kid away, and then when the teacher's trying to actually do the job, like discipline their kid, they end up blowing up on the teacher. So how dare you do that?
Mhm.
Well, I think we've beat that one to death, and the outsourcing. I just wanted to make sure we were there. So now we get back to this idea of discipleship. Okay, so we accept the fact as parents that it's our role, our responsibility to do this. We have the dinner table, time frame where we can sit and do that. You can't do it if somebody's got a phone in their hand. You can't do it if you've got a phone in your hand. You can't do it if the TV's on. You can't do it. You can't do it if you're not fully present. So other than just being fully present, how do we even begin the conversations to give us an opportunity for discipleship?
So, and some of this came out because my wife and we went out the other day, and she needed to go to the chiropractor, and she was tired, so I took her out. And this becomes the time where my wife and we start reflecting on our family, and we're like, okay, let's take a look. And we didn't plan this. Like I said, she was just literally, "I need to go to the chiropractor," and I was like, "I'll drive you because you're too tired." And again, it was almost like what we're talking about, this dinner table discipleship with my wife and we took this moment, and we did end up going out to eat. We had to get some dinner, but that was our conversation, was let's reflect on the family. Let's look, how do we properly order our family? How are we ordering the loves of our children by the things that we're letting them do, their entertainments? And, like right now, we're moving and we tend to go into screen-free summer. And we start thinking about this, and how do we, instead of just doing this thing, how do we properly order their love? So the first place it starts with parents is reflecting and to honestly begin to examine. So if the parents get together, that's one way. But if for the single parents, you can reflect using pastors, using people from church, the friends, the ones who especially know your children, to have those kinds of conversations over coffee. And in that reflection, you're going to start thinking about the proper ways to be intentional rather than just reacting. And it also really helps to talk to somebody, because you might go overboard. Because I think this is what happens with some families. They're like, "Oh, here's this big plan." And it's like, yeah, probably need to scale that back. And even with my wife, some of the changes we want to make is with our devotional habits. And one of the things I do right now with my younger boys is we pray together every night. But it's usually they're waiting on me to come in and pray with them. And Stacy's like, "Why don't we do this as a family? Why are we not all together?" And I'm like, why not? All right. Well, again, we don't make a big deal out of it. But that night, what I did is I told my boys, my wife was again in bed, icing her back. So I was like, "Boys, come here, get out of the bed, come over here." And we went and we had our prayer time with Stacy right there. And it was subtle. It was just kind of, and again, there was no balking, no nothing. They're like, "Okay." Those kinds of changes, it's that more organic. It's
Right,
just
right.
we have bedtime, so how can we, be more focused, and teach them the importance of prayer. That prayer is not just, the way it's often used, where it's like, well, we can't eat until we say the prayer. Now it's eat time. It's like, no, we're beginning our mealtime by thanking the one who provides for us,
Right.
who is the source of all good things, which is a whole different mindset. And even just teaching children that way, showing them that's the kind of thing for parents. If you sit and you don't just react, don't just like get a wild idea, start with some of those small changes, because you got to remember, if you as a parent don't have the habit, you're not going to be able to sustain it.
Sure. Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure. Yeah.
you have to want it. It has to become part of it. And that's, I think, the big encouragement. That's what we're trying to really instill in parents, be that kind of person, almost like what Paul says. Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. And there is that element, even if you're just one step ahead of your child, be that person who's one step ahead that your child can follow.
That's a really good point. I was just kind of thinking that when I started discipling men, the first time by taking on that role, I grew exponentially because I was only really, I didn't know how to say it, but that's the right way to say it. The first time I did it, I was maybe a step ahead from these men, just keeping up just enough to teach it and train it. And I grew, exponentially the very first time that I decided to take that role on. And then it just continues.
Well, it's interesting because, as we mentioned earlier, like we want to teach our kids something. Like, even in our other podcasts, we talk about like taking time out of our day to actually sit down with them and teach them rather than just doing it for them. It's kind of thinking about them when they're trying to overcome something, we do it for them. Rather us teaching them, and that takes a little time, and sometimes it's frustrating because we're so antsy, we want to get on to the next thing. But even, because you become better when you're teaching other people, because now it becomes like you're able to explain the things that you're just doing through muscle memory or whatever, and it helps you really understand what you're talking about even more, and you do grow. And I think it's an awesome thing, just passing on the knowledge that you have onto your children in an intentional way so that they can grow and you can grow together as a parent and child.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that this discipleship, it's understood that it's not really just our children.
Yeah.
It's our whole family.
Yep.
Like if we're to be the spiritual leaders,
Mm-hmm.
or even, it is a parent's responsibility for the children, but there's an element which we as men also ought to, be the spiritual leaders of our home. When I met my wife, she was far more knowledgeable on scripture than I was, and I was absolutely ill-equipped to be the spiritual leader. If my wife knows the Bible and is a far more mature Christian, why in the world would I be making decisions in my own home? And so I think there's this idea that it's kind of an across the board thing, is that we should be equipped to be able to do these things. And if we're not, by taking on these roles and responsibilities, we will grow.
That's one of the things they find in general. Like, once you begin teaching something, that's when you really begin to learn it yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's the advantage of parents. You will grow faster as you learn, as you pass that on. And I think that's why with some parents, they feel, maybe behind, or maybe the kids have, like, because of their involvement, grown more, but parents still retain authority and a wisdom of years. So don't diminish that. Don't diminish that role and abdicate. There's that element of start today, start reflecting, start looking now. And it is one of the best things you can do, not just for your family, but for this future spiritual well-being of your children.
Yeah, except the fact that you don't have to outsource it and grow yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the conversation, as always. You can find us at familiesofvirtue.com, and our podcast, Virtuous Roots, can be found on all major streaming platforms. Be blessed, and we'll talk to you next time.